One night, my mom came into my room. "Pack your bags, we need to move out of this house right now," she said. When I said, "Again?" she replied, "River, come on, get to it now. If we don't move out ASAP, you will have to come visit your parents in prison." This happens pretty regularly. My parents start a new business. After a while, they always mess it up. They either rip off their customers or borrow money from a bunch of people that they never pay back. We grab all our stuff, throw it into a truck, and move to another state before people come banging on our door. For example, last year they opened a dog hotel. People would leave their dogs there while traveling. When someone would bring in an expensive dog, like a Tibetan Mastiff or a Chow Chow, my dad would sell it online. You heard that right. My dad was selling other people's dogs. When the owners came to pick them up, he would lie and tell them their dog was either dead or had run away. When social media blew up with this, we packed up and left. Once, they opened up a secondhand clothing store in a small town. The business was great. It turned out that once a week, my mom was going to another town nearby. She was paying some kids there to steal clothes that people hung up in their backyards. You guessed it, right? Those were the clothes my mom was selling in the store. When one of the kids got caught and ratted her out, my parents were exposed. As always, we skipped town and moved to yet another state. It pains me to say this, but unfortunately, my parents are crooks, and both of them have the exact same personality, so they get along really well. They are always trying to cut corners with every new venture they start. That's why they end up doing illegal stuff. What's worse is that they can never make real money, so we're always broke. In 2 years, I'll be graduating high school. I need money to be able to afford a good college. When I talked to my parents about it, my dad said, "Forget about college. You'll start working with us when you finish high school." I said, "Dad, I don't think what you're doing is right. I'm not going to be like you guys." And he got really mad at me. My mom screamed, "You don't like what we do? Then you're moving out the moment you're done with school. Good luck taking care of yourself." My dad took it even further, saying, "Your mom's absolutely right, and we won't be taking care of you until then either. You better start looking for a job tomorrow." "I'm never going to be like you. I will be an honest person and make money the right way," I yelled back and left. That night, I looked at job postings for hours. I applied for jobs that seemed like a good fit for me. In a couple of days, I started working at the reception desk of a small hotel. I went to work every day after school. One night, when I got back from work, I saw a homeless man in front of our building. Normally, there are no homeless people in our neighborhood. He was staring at me. "Can I help you, sir? Are you looking for someone?" I asked. He said, "Is your name River?" I did not expect that. "Yes, how did you know that?" I said. "River, I recognize you from photos." "I'm your grandfather," he said. Naturally, I was shocked. At first, I wasn't sure if he was lying or not, but after talking to him for a while, I was convinced that he really was my grandfather. He was my dad's dad. They'd been estranged for 20 years. My dad had told me his parents had died. Apparently, he'd been lying about his dad. I gave my grandfather a hug. "I'm sure my dad will be so happy to see you. Come on, let's go to our house," I said. But my grandfather didn't want to go there unannounced. "I don't know how they will react. Will you go and ask them first? I really miss my son and my daughter-in-law. I'm here to make peace with them. I'd appreciate it if they would see me." I ran home. I told my parents that my grandfather was downstairs and told them everything we'd just talked about. Their expressions changed. My dad asked, "Are you sure it's him? How did he find us?" "It's definitely him. He misses you both so much. Let's go down and bring him up here," I replied. My parents looked at each other anxiously. My mom snapped, "You think we'll just let a homeless guy come into our house? Go and tell him that we don't want to see him." I couldn't believe it. I was about to argue with them, but my dad hushed me. "Streets are where he belongs. Tell that homeless man if he comes here again, I'll make him regret it," he yelled. I went downstairs in tears. There was nothing I could do. I told my grandfather what my parents had told me. He said sadly, "Really? I wasn't expecting this at all. I thought they would actually like to see me after 20 years. It started raining. I held my grandfather's arm. "Forget about them. Let's get you a place to stay. I won't leave you here in the streets," I said. I took my grandfather to the hotel where I was working. I told the night manager about the situation. I asked him to deduct the cost of my grandfather's room from my salary. Then I put him up in a nice room. "What happened between you and my parents? Why haven't you seen each other in 20 years? I asked. My grandfather started telling me the story. "I used to own a big jewelry store. When your parents got married, I gave both of them jobs there. They were sales associates. I told them, get some experience first, then I'll make you partners. But they wanted to do their own thing. One night, they came to the store and stole all the jewelry. When I came to the store the next morning and saw that there was nothing left, I was in shock. I checked the footage from the security cameras and I saw that the thieves were my son and my daughter-in-law. I didn't go to the police because I didn't want them to end up in prison. I went bankrupt overnight. I started living on the streets because I lost everything. This story made me so sad. Unfortunately, these were the kinds of things you could expect from my parents. They don't want to see you because they feel guilty. Maybe they're afraid you want revenge, I suggested. My grandfather said, maybe, but I came here to make peace with them. I'm still happy to be here because I found out what a wonderful granddaughter I have, and gave me a hug. The next day, I stopped at a bakery. I got a little cake and a single candle. It was my birthday. I was going to celebrate it with my grandfather. But when I arrived at the hotel, they told me he had left really early. I was so sad that he left without saying goodbye. During my shift, all I could think about was why he did this. After I finished working, I was walking to the bus stop. A luxury car stopped right next to me. When the passenger window rolled down, I was surprised to see my grandfather inside. My dear granddaughter, happy birthday! Do you want to come for a ride with me? He said. I hopped in. The last time I saw my grandfather, he was a homeless man. Now he looked rich. He said, I realize all this took you by surprise. I'll tell you everything. But first, allow me to give you a little birthday present. I found you and your family with help from private detectives. Thanks to their reports, I know it's your birthday today. After a short ride, we arrived at the airport. We drove straight to a runway. We got out of the car. There was a private jet right in front of us. The pilot and the crew were waiting. My grandfather said, Happy birthday, River. Please accept this gift. And I screamed, What? Grandpa, are you giving me a plane for my birthday? Are you rich? My grandfather patted me on the head. After your parents stole all the jewelry from my store, I really did go bankrupt and was homeless for 2 years. But I still knew the jewelry business quite well. An old friend of mine saved me from the streets and hired me as a consultant. I was traveling to Africa to buy diamonds straight from the mines. Eventually, I bought some shares in a mine. The investment paid off, and now I own 5 different diamond mines around the world. Everything was illuminated as my grandfather was telling me his story, but there was one more thing I was still curious about. Grandpa, why did you introduce yourself as a homeless man? If you had said you were rich, my parents would have definitely wanted to see you, I said. That's exactly why I didn't tell them. I've been diagnosed with cancer. Doctors say I barely have a year left. That's why I came to visit you all. I wanted them to know that I'd forgiven them. I just wanted them to tell me they regretted what they'd done. I was going to leave everything to them, but I had to test them to see if they were being sincere. That's why I hid the fact that I was a billionaire and pretended to be homeless. Unfortunately, they didn't want to see me. That's how I knew they hadn't changed at all. Therefore, I'm going to leave everything to my kind-hearted granddaughter. I only have one condition, though. You will not be giving your parents a single penny, because they don't deserve it. They need to be punished for what they've done. We got into the car again. When we arrived at our building, my grandfather said, Will you please go tell your parents a billionaire wants to see them? I'm sure they'll come running. I went home and told my parents what had happened. They were stunned. Just like my grandfather had guessed, they practically ran downstairs. My grandfather was waiting in front of the building. My dad said, Daddy, you got us wrong. We love you so much. Please forgive us. My mom was shedding crocodile tears and saying, River is still so young. She can't take on this responsibility. I beg you to forgive us. Leave your inheritance to your family. But my grandfather had made up his mind. It's too late to talk about all this now. I gave you a chance, but I saw that neither of you had changed. I won't let you near my money. My mom tried a different strategy by turning to me. What do you think, River? Your grandfather is not being fair, right? Will you please tell him you are on our side? She said. But I agreed with my grandfather. I'm sorry, Mom. I wish you'd taken in that homeless man and apologized for what you did all those years ago. Then it would have all been fine, I replied. My dad got really mad. So ungrateful. We've been taking care of you for free for years. If you two are conspiring against us, then we are disowning you, he screamed. My mom was with my dad on this one, too. Do whatever you want. You're not our daughter anymore, she said. They turned their backs to us and went into the building. I was literally disowned, but I wasn't sad at all. They were already going to kick me out when I turned 18. I just had to leave home a little earlier. My grandfather smiled at me and said, Do you want to check out your new plane? We could celebrate your birthday with a nice dinner in Paris if you'd like, he said. I'm 14. If you're my age or younger, you'll probably think that what I'm about to tell you is unbelievable. For example, when your mom wakes you up in the morning, can you tell her, I played Roblox until 4 a.m.? I'm really tired. I'm not going to school today. That's exactly what I told my mom yesterday, and she said, sleep tight, darling, and gave me a kiss on the cheek. I'll give you another example. If you told your father when you were 12 years old, I want to get a tattoo, do you know any good tattoo artists? Would he tell you, there's a girl at my office who has really cool tattoos. I'll ask her for her artist's number. That's exactly what my dad told me. Next week, when I showed him the dragon tattoo I got on my arm, he said, "It looks amazing. You should get one on your other arm, too." As I said at the beginning, you might not believe any of this, because as everyone knows, parents like to stick their noses into everything their kids are doing. They make a lot of rules, some of which make sense, and others that are useless, and expect the kids to follow them, no questions asked. The kids, of course, often have no choice but to follow them, because otherwise they get punished. This might sound really weird to you, but my parents have never set any rules for me. They never tell me what I can or cannot do. They don't question the things I do either. That's how it's always been at our house. When I was a kid, I didn't realize that this wasn't normal. I thought that's how it is for everyone. But eventually, after seeing how other kids and their parents interact with each other, I realized that this wild life with no rules was something unique to my family. My mom and dad have always treated me as if I were an adult. For example, when it was time for me to start school, they sat me down and said, "Gemma, do you want to go to school? You can homeschool with private tutors if you want. It's up to you to decide what you want to do." I was very young then and didn't really know what school was. I just knew that almost all the other kids were going to school, and I thought it would be fun to play with them. I said I want to go to school just because I wanted to play. After that, my dad said, "Deal, but if you change your mind at some point, you can stop going. You don't even have to tell us that you don't want to go anymore. We'll figure it out when we see that you stopped." At first, I was only going to school so I could play with other kids, but eventually I started to like what I was learning, and I decided to keep on going. By the way, for those of you who are curious, my grades are not bad at all. But my parents have never asked me, "Do you have homework?" or "What did you get on your so-and-so test?" When I tell my mom I got a good grade, she's happy for me, but that's as far as it goes, and she never brings it up herself. Yes, I'm in school, but my parents don't put any pressure on me to get good grades. I think that actually helps me to do better in school. So why are my parents acting like this? Because they both had problems with the rules they had to follow when they were kids. When my mom was a girl, she had a notebook she carried with her all the time. When her parents made up a rule for her, she wrote it down. They made up so many rules that she couldn't keep track of them unless she wrote them down. My dad grew up in an orphanage. He also had a ton of rules he had to follow the whole time. By the time they both turned 18, they couldn't take it anymore and ended up leaving their homes and going traveling. They met in a mountain village in Peru and got married a week later. That day, they promised each other, "In the future, when we have a child, we will never have any rules for her. She'll grow up to be the freest child in the world." Obviously, that child is me. I don't know if I'm the freest kid in the world, but I'm definitely the freest one among my friends. Some of my friends actually don't like the fact that there are no rules in our house. They say, "This is too much. Sure, nobody likes to have too many rules, but we're still just kids. Our parents need to have at least some rules for us." I want you to help me figure out who's right. Let me give you a few more examples, and you can tell me if you think I have too much freedom. Let me know what you think in the comments after you finish watching. Just like with everything else, my parents don't set any rules when it comes to going online or playing games. During last summer vacation, I got addicted to Candy Crush. I played so much that by the time I finally got bored and quit, I was on level 5430. Those who've played it know that this game looks easy, but some levels are extremely hard. There were times when I didn't leave my room and played Candy Crush for 3 days straight. I would only get up when I really had to go to the bathroom. I was totally going too far. My parents were bringing me food, saying, "We missed you, love," and sitting with me for a while. I couldn't stop because I was obsessed with the game. Parents never said a word about it to me the whole time, because they are completely against forbidding me from doing whatever I want. Do you think there are any restrictions when it comes to food? Of course not. There is no set dinner time in our house. Whoever wants to eat will eat whatever and whenever they want. My dad loves to cook. Every time I open the fridge, there is some food that he's prepared, but I don't have to eat it if I don't want to. For example, the other day at breakfast, I told my mom I feel like having ice cream. She replied, "Check the fridge to see if we have any. If not, we can get it delivered." I don't know how that sounds to you, but some days I only have ice cream for breakfast. Last winter, I had chips for dinner every night for a month and a half. Of course, that wasn't healthy at all. But in the end, I was the one who decided to stop instead of my parents telling me to. I don't think there's anything wrong with living in a house with no food rules either. I think it's wonderful to eat only the things that you feel like eating. As I said earlier, my parents don't even forbid me from getting tattoos. I can get as many tattoos or piercings as I want, but most tattoo artists don't believe me. Every time they ask me to bring them a signed letter from my parents. For my 5th tattoo, I wanted to get a small butterfly on my neck. I went to a tattoo artist who I heard was really good. She had a daughter around my age. Even though I showed her my letter, she said it's not right for a kid your age to get tattoos and refused to give me one. She even asked for my mom's number and called her up right away. She argued with my mom for allowing me to get a tattoo. In the end, I couldn't wait any longer and sneaked out from the shop. As I was running out the door, the woman was screaming behind me. To tell you the truth, I can understand why other parents are mad at mine. They think that a kid raised with as much freedom as I had would be a bad example for other kids. They are right, because when my friends see how I live, they start questioning the rules their families impose on them and stop following them. This, of course, doesn't make the parents happy. When I was 9, I went to a friend's slumber party for the first time. We were playing a really fun board game and laughing like crazy. At some point, my friend's mom came in. "Girls, it's past 11. You'd better go to bed," she said. It was the first time I was seeing a mom tell her kid what to do. This was really weird for me because I wasn't used to it. But the weirdest part was that everyone suddenly stopped playing. When I saw that, I said, "But we were having so much fun. Let's keep playing. It's too early to go to bed yet." The girls stared at me in disbelief. They were shocked that I had the nerve to say something like that. My friend's mom frowned and said, "Gemma, in our house, when the grown-ups say something, the kids do what they are told." Naively, I asked her, "And what happens if they don't?" She said, "Of course, they get punished." Because there are no rules in our house, there are no punishments either. When my mom said they get punished, I didn't even know what she was talking about. Even though it's been years since this happened, I still can't wrap my head around the concept of punishment. One time, I made plans to go to the movies with a friend. When I called her, she said, "I can't make it, I'm grounded. I can't leave my room this weekend." I asked her why. She had asked her dad, "My allowance is too low, could you raise it a little bit?" For some reason, her dad got super angry and grounded her for the whole weekend. I think it makes no sense that parents see it as their right to punish their kids. Grown-ups think they are the boss of the house, and unfortunately, kids often accept that without any objections. Now you know my story. Would you like to grow up in a house where you are free to do anything? Or do you think having no rules is